I'm Kyle Caldwell. I sing, I play guitar, a little bit of the keys, a bunch of the bass. I make the beats, not the drums, but the Ableton beats. I try not to force anything, the things that are meant for me, the things that are meant for this are just going to show up. Never want to be putting the triangle peg into the square hole because that's obviously not going to work. So the things that are meant for this band just show up, and a lot of times that is amazingly easy because I love this band. A lot of the songwriting comes from nothing. Like, for instance, silence is infinite, right? And then you have a bass line and you've defined silence, and then you get a drum part and a guitar part and a key line and a vocal and then lyrics, and all of a sudden you have this sliver of infinity. And people are like, well, how did you write that song? And it's just like, well, that's literally the absence of everything else. Like, in a one-by-one block of clay, there's an infinite number of statues. That's where the songwriting process comes from me, is the ability to just, everything else can just go away, and here's this song, and it means what it means. Oh, that's what songwriting for me, that's where that comes from. I have multiple favorite tracks on Old Hat, New Fashion, and New Hat, Old Fashioned. Old Hat, New Fashion, and New Hat, Old Fashioned. My favorites is the very first one, called Grass Strip. I made not a big deal, but it was just obvious this should be the first one that anyone ever hears of General Genre, because it's just so dead in the middle of everything that I've kind of gone for with General Genre. It touches broadly and very specifically on themes of the album, of the musicianship, the coordination, the balance between all the instruments, the balance between all the players, the balance between direction. It was sort of a no-brainer. It's sort of my favorite song, and I got the luxury of putting it first. If people get to hear just one song, please listen to Grass Strip. I just love it. It's gotta be home before sunset, gotta be home before sunrise. It's the panic of, here you are, this existential dread, existential elation, all the things that you can't control, all the things that you can, all the hate and love and all these weird emotions. Grass Strip kind of puts it all in the nice little basket to carry around for some reason. So one of my favorite tracks is a track called Citizen. It is, I don't necessarily believe in a reincarnation, but there is a part of an idea of reincarnation even within this mortal coil that I have here, where you go through life and you change, you go through life and you experience different things, and you realize that no matter what's going on, all these different circumstances, there are things that inevitably are the same, that remind you of something, like seeing the sunshine when you were 8 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden you're however old and it looks the same, it feels the same, everything's different, but here it all is again. And it's so interesting to compare different phases or different eras of your life to different eras of humanity, and of course speculation, but you can't help but think they had to have thought this. I think the most impactful, I know I've talked about Grass Strip, I would put that in there, but there's a song called Strolls, and everybody thinks it's about something else, which is great. I know what it means for me. The fact that everyone has a strong opinion about it makes me happy, and I guess that would make it impactful. I think one of the impactful things is, a lot of times all four of us sing in General Genre, and this is a strong song. The ending of it ends strongly with a cappella 4-piece vocals. I don't know if it's the words or the music or the feeling or what it is exactly, but for some reason Strolls seems like such an impactful song. I started making music when I was 15. I remember the exact second that music jumped into me, and I was like, well, this is obviously what I want to do for the rest of my life, So at this point you may think it's a cliche, but in, the early 90s, I remember it was Nirvana, and I was just like, okay, yeah, y'all have been making me sit through all this other stuff. Like, where has this been? So, yeah, that was, as cliche as that may sound now, it was huge. And by the way, Nirvana is still awesome, kids. My favorite band of all time isn't a band. It's a dude named Sergei Rachmaninoff. It's 100 years old. It sounds like the future. I can feel every ounce of joy and pain that dude ever felt. If you know the story of Concerto 1, where he had an orchestra play it, and it got messed up, and so he stopped it and walked around and grabbed all the scores, the sheets of music off all the stands and walked out. It's just like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. Newer stuff like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. What a great band. I've always been a Pavement fan. The Flaming Lips, they're locals, but even if they weren't, you would seek them out and go be an acolyte or whatever. Like, they've written such wonderful music. When I was 16 years old, I was sitting in a bedroom by myself in Watonga, Oklahoma, playing a crappy little acoustic guitar, and all of a sudden there was a knock on my door, and my mom, who's a school teacher, comes back and is like, oh, this guy who's obviously a musician, he's a couple years older than me, he's at the door and he wants to talk to me. So she's a little apprehensive because, he's the musician type. So I go out there and he asked me, hey, is that you playing guitar? And I was like, probably. I don't know of anybody else that plays guitar around here, so probably. He was like, oh, very complimentary. Oh, it sounds so good. And we started chatting. I have a band. I'm like, oh, yes, I can hear it all the time. It's wonderful. He goes, we record with a guy named Trent Bell in Norman. He's in a band called the Chainsaw Kittens. And I grew up in a cave in Watonga, so I didn't know who the Chainsaw Kittens were. So he just gives me the number. And so I call Trent Bell from the Chainsaw Kittens just cold and talk to him for a while and wind up booking a recording session. He didn't know, we were 16 years old. We drive to Norman and we were still in high school. And I still to the day demand that my bands go play and record at Trent Bell's. That's just like a non-starter for a conversation. It's like, this is an obvious thing. So, and the thing about Trent is, when we went and recorded with him, we were paying him by the hour, and he would make us redo stuff, and we were like, oh, this guy, he's just trying to milk us out of money. And we got the album home, and we were like, oh, no. This guy was trying to make us not suck. And so that's one of the things that, at some point, I am so lucky that Trent Bell took an interest, that Trent Bell took cared at all, and I've gone back and back. I've made some wonderful, wonderful albums with the guy that would not have been anywhere near as good without him. I'm sure there's, some dream stuff like working with this person or working with that person or whatever. Like, for instance, 3 of my favorite heroes of music that are eligible to, do something with. Little League played a show with Stephen Malkmus and the Jigs, who's the singer for Pavement. We got to work with the Flaming Lips once. That's great. I've never met Tom York. I've never seen Radiohead, so that's one that I'm missing out on. But besides that, the reason I make music is so, you do the thing and later it's middle of the night, you're not eligible and no one's doing anything, and you can go back and think like, oh, let's listen to that. Oh, I'm so glad we did that. So I like that every project I've done, including general genre, is the absolute, what I want to do. It's always been like that. And I try to approach it from honesty and realism and what's meant for you and what's not meant for you. That's not for me to decide, but if you can know that. I don't know. I don't have a project that I never wish I would have done, because all the projects touch on that thing why I love to make music.